In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the inns of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. This is the opening line of today's book, The Hobbit. The one I read mostly from was this great tome, The Annotated Hobbit, annotated by Douglas Anderson, who I actually had the privilege of meeting at a conference. But I also read a little bit from this one. You'll notice that it has a spiral binding on it. That's because at university I took a couple courses on Tolkien, and I wrote a complicated paper on The Hobbit, and I needed to be able to keep it open. So there's that one. And then I have this one. This one's in French and Latin. I have a Latin one. These last two I haven't read all the way through. I read here and there at them. I'll probably read them someday. I have to say, my Latin is not very good, pretty much non-existent. So this is a little book that started it all. The whole trend for fantasy novels that fill up every bookstore, every used bookstore. Our used bookstore in town has an entire room dedicated to books of the high fantasy genre. High fantasy denotes a subgenre of fantasy where it takes place in a world, a secondary world that is completely separate from the primary world. This room is the primary world. Bilbo's Hobbit hole is a secondary world, and they're not connected. Only in my imagination are they connected. High fantasy often has kind of a medieval feel to it. There's an epic story arc where they're trying to save the world from destruction. There's definite good and evil. There may be dragons, elves, magic. It's a wonderful genre. The Hobbit was published in 1939, and it was very popular because nothing like it preceded it. There were books like Alice in Wonderland and a few other books, but they just weren't. They were just a little on the silly side, to tell you the truth. Now, there is silliness in The Hobbit, for sure, but there's enough seriousness to give it some gravitas and make it very appealing to pretty much everyone, young and old. Since it was so popular, his publisher wanted him to write a sequel, more Hobbit stories. So Tolkien sat down and started working on it. It was a very long project, took him many years. But he wrote and finally said to his publisher, the whole thing's gotten away from me. It's become a monstrously large book, and it's really not a children's book anymore. Although children like it, but it has some adult themes, I would say. Not an adult in a modern sense, but there's wars, things like that. Here are the characters. Bilbo Baggins, who is a hobbit. If you don't know, I'd be surprised if you didn't know, but the hobbits are just small people, about 3 feet tall, and look like us in every other way, except they have hairy feet, so they don't wear shoes. And they are agricultural people. They enjoy the simple life. They like good food. They don't like machinery. And they live in a peaceful little country called the Shire, which, to Tolkien, the Shire was idealized England. They didn't know it, but their little country was under continual guard by a group of men called the Dunedain, who just kept evil and war and things like that away from the Shire. They didn't know that at the time, though. They just thought they just thought they were the ones keeping everything in good shape. And then there's Gandalf, who is a wizard, big beard, pointy hat, everyone's favorite character. And there's Thorin Oakenshield, a cranky old dwarf, really, and his 12 dwarf companions. There's some elves. Elrond Half-Elven, he's the Elf Lord of Rivendell, and the Elven King, he reigned in Mirkwood, and Gollum. This is where Gollum gets started. So the plot is pretty simple, really. It's what's called a picturesque book, where there's one thing happens after the other. Um, there's there is an arc, there is a plan, there's a goal to the story, but this will happen, and then this will happen. They're attacked by spiders, that gets resolved. They're attacked by trolls, that gets resolved. They're attacked by goblins, that gets resolved, until they come to the end. So it's a picturesque, not picturesque, but picturesque type of novel story. The plot says, as I say, is Thorin's. He's a royalty. He was a king under a mountain, a dwarven realm under the mountain Erebor in the far east. This mountain was pretty much solid gold, from what I can tell, with every gem, jewel you can think of. And the dwarves who lived under there and mined were immensely rich, and they were involved with trade, towns nearby. And all was well until one day they heard this loud roaring sound, and it was Smog, the dragon, coming down from the north. And he burned up most of the dwarves, chased away the rest, and squatted on the gold for decades. So the dwarves that got away, that would be Thorin and his group. They want to go back and take their kingdom back. They are somewhat lacking in resources. But Gandalf has a key and a map that will help them with their quest. And he also thinks that the company needs a burglar. Doesn't say why, but they need a burglar. And he has chosen Bilbo Baggins, little Bilbo Baggins, to be their burglar. The dwarves think he's an odd choice. They think he looks more like a grocer than a burglar. And Bilbo himself has no desire, no adventures for me, he kept saying. He doesn't want to do it at all. But at the last minute, he just can't give it up and decides to go. So they do make it eventually to the mountain and chase they chase the dragon out of the mountain. The dragon then destroys the neighboring town. But before Smog can destroy it completely, Bard, who knows there's a bare spot right here where an arrow could pierce, climbs on a tower and shoots him down dead. But their whole town, Lake Town, is destroyed. And they think, since they actually had helped the dwarves in their quest, they actually expected that the dwarves, who were immensely wealthy now, would help them rebuild their town. But Thorin has come down with dragon sickness, which is greed. He is not willing to let loose one golden coin. And then there's a war, the War of Five Armies, the Battle of Five Armies. And the armies are the dwarves, the orcs, you're going to wonder where they came from, the elves, where'd they come from, the men, and eagles. Well, these characters appeared on the journey to the mountain, and I haven't told you about them. One of the things that happens is they get captured by goblins and dragged down to Goblin Town, where the Great Goblin is going to kill them, of course, but then Gandalf, who had been missing for a little while, appears and kills the Great Goblin. This upsets the orcs, or goblins, they're the same thing, and that's why they come to attack the dwarves. The elves, the elves, it's not entirely clear why the elves are involved in this. The books just has the elves' reasoning being perfectly generous, but when the movies, which I'll talk about in a minute, their motives are not generous. And the eagles, who have motives only of their own. And so there's a battle, big battle, and obviously the good guys win. And so that's the plot, kind of a simple plot. So it's like a hero's quest for sure. Here's the setup. The humble little guy from home doesn't want to go, but decides he should. Over the course of a lot of adventures, he grows and matures and becomes a hero, actually. And then there's some setbacks. And then there's the finally end and then goes back home and is a different person, has changed. Now, one of the episodes that happens on here has a significance to the whole Lord of the Rings story. And that is, while they're all captured by the goblins and they're in Goblin Town and they're dealing with the Great Goblin, somehow Bilbo falls down into, I guess you could say, the basement of this giant mountain. And he encounters Gollum, and he also finds a gold ring. So he and Gollum have a game of riddles, and Gollum loses, but then he also discovers that his ring is lost. Meanwhile, Bilbo is discovering it's a magic ring, and if he puts it on, he becomes invisible. So now he has a means to escape. So he has, he calls it his sword. One of the dwarves says, well, basically it's just a letter opener, dagger. And he has a means to be invisible, so he could kill Gollum. In fact, for a few seconds he thinks about killing Gollum. Because Gollum, who realizes his ring is lost, his precious, is crying. And Bilbo, out of great pity and mercy, cannot bring himself to kill Gollum. And he leapfrogs over him and rejoins the rest of the quest, and the story just goes on. This turns out to be one of the most important incidents in the entire Tolkien legendarium, believe it or not. Because this act of mercy on the part of Bilbo is what saves the whole world at the very end of the third book of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Because at the very end, so they have to destroy the ring. The ring belongs to Sauron, the mega bad guy. So they have to throw the ring into its original in Mordor. All these words have come into modern usage has, and we all know what Mordor is. Well, in Mordor, there's a volcano, Mount Doom, the cracks of Doom, and they have to throw the ring into the fire to get rid of it, destroy it, and bring an end to Sauron and his world domination plans. Frodo, as you know, probably is Bilbo's nephew. And so he's trudged all the way from the Shire, I don't know how many miles, to Mordor, to Mount Doom, to throw the ring in. And when he finally gets there, he just can't do it because this ring has an evil effect on whoever has it. And he just can't bring himself to throw it in. And Sam, his companion, his faithful companion, is over there yelling, Master, you have to throw it away. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? And Frodo's just saying, I'm not going to throw it away. It's mine. It's my precious. I'm going to keep it. And he puts the ring on, and he becomes invisible. Well, what big surprise to everyone, Gollum reappears. Gollum's been trying to find his ring all this time. He's been trying to get it back. And they tussle, and Gollum falls into the volcano with the ring, and the ring is destroyed. Now, just think, if Bilbo had killed Gollum many decades earlier in that rotten goblin basement, this wouldn't have happened, and the world would have been lost. The main thing in the whole Lord of the Rings story is the mercy and pity of Bilbo. Because if he hadn't shown mercy to Gollum wouldn't have showed up at the right minute to destroy the ring. How about that? Maybe next time we have an opportunity to show mercy to somebody, maybe we could think about this little story. You know, mercy is better than sacrifice. So that's the plot. And it's a pretty good plot at that. So now it's time to talk about the movies. Obviously, I'm going to mention Peter Jackson's three movie trilogy. Originally, they just wanted it to be one movie long because it's a very short book. It's not a very long book. It's a kid's book. It has a very thin-ish plot, really, just killing spiders and goblins and tricking trolls and whatnot. But one thing led after the other. Now, if you want to know the whole complicated, depressing story about how The Hobbit became so long and so disparaged, I have to say, There's lots of YouTube videos and internet articles and everything going into the whole entire story. But I have to say that the Hobbit movies came after the beloved Lord of the Ring movies were made. So the Lord of the Ring movies, that trilogy of movies by Peter Jackson, were just so well loved. I mean, you can pick it apart and find little oddball things you don't like, but on the whole, I mean, it is outstanding. I mean, I just watch it all. I can't tell how many times I've watched them, and I still get teary-eyed at the Ride of the Rohirrim. I'm sorry. and so naturally, they thought we need more of that. And so, okay, well, there's The Hobbit. And there was some complications of getting it going. And then finally they said, okay, it's going to be 3 movies, just like The Lord of the Rings was. And Peter Jackson is going to do it. But we don't have very much time. You have to hurry up and make it really quick. We don't have as much money either. So the Hobbit movie in places looks a little shabby compared to The Lord of the Rings. But that is not really what bothers people. What bothers people is, since the book is short and the extended version of these movies lasts almost 9 hours, 8 hours and 31 minutes to be exact. There's got to be a lot of filler. So a lot of characters are invented. A lot of characters from The Lord of the Rings were drugged back in time and put into The Hobbit, because The Hobbit takes place many decades. The story of The Hobbit takes place many decades before the Lord of the Rings story happens. Frodo's not even born yet. And so there's just every scene is extended out to its extreme maximum, and many things are invented. Some of them horrible, like the elf maiden and the dwarf romance is not very appealing for sure. But there's some good things. Bjorn, who is a human who can shapeshift into a bear. This is taken from good old Norse stories where there's a similar character. He lives in a house with all of his animals, and he's just a delightful person. When he's a human, he has a Russian accent. He's great. So it's worth the whole thing just to watch Bjorn. But there's a lot of physics-defying gymnastics. Generally, things are at their worst when Legolas, who does not belong in this movie at all, is brought in, and he just to show him being an athletic swords fighter. But I would still say that it's still 9 hours spent in Middle-earth. And you can't say that about everything that's been made about the Lord of the Rings. The current TV, Amazon TV series, The Rings of Power, you don't feel like you're in Middle-earth at all. You feel like you're on a set of Star Trek or something. I don't know what it is. When I read the Silmarillion and talk about that, I'll have more to say about the Rings of Power. They're coming up on their 3rd season, which I suppose I'll watch. But it doesn't feel at all like Middle-earth. So is it possible to make The Hobbit into a much shorter movie? Why, yes, it is. In fact, it was. The Rankin Bass animated version lasts an hour and 30 minutes. It's a cartoon, and it's charming, and it's pretty true to the story, but it has, and it's one of the things about Tolkien's books, if you haven't read them, is he has a lot of poetry in there, poetry that can be sung. And in this Rankin Bass animated version from 1978, they sing all the songs. It's really cool. But they have some, I can't remember who it is now, but there's a folk singer who was popular at the time in the 70s who sings this really sappy ballad, the Ballad of Bilbo Baggins, I suppose it's called, and it's a very it's cringeworthy. But I would, if you have kids and they can't sit through 9 hours of The Hobbit, they could certainly sit through an hour and 30 minutes of the Rankin Bass animation, which is quite charming. Um, I like it. I don't. It's just delightful. And there are lots of other versions of The Hobbit out there. When I was in university, we had a movie night. We watched a Russian version, and that was that was very amateurish. It was, I think, a high school class play could have done a better job. So there we have it. We have The Hobbit, the book, the movies, and the cartoon. I'm going to give every one of these things 10 out of 10. When I compare it to a lot of stuff we have today, even the Hobbit movie with its obvious defects is still great, you know. In fact, this got me thinking about social contagion. These movies all came out around Christmas time, and we used to have a lot of family. We had family would come over for a Western Christmas, and we would go to see a Hobbit movie. We just call them Hobbit movies, even if it was Lord of the Rings. So for 6 years in a row, that's what we did. We went and saw whatever the current Tolkien extravaganza was. And when I saw the first one, I came out kind of bedazzled. I thought it was great. I thought it was wonderful. And then I made the mistake of going on the internet and discovered everybody else thought it was awful. So I looked at their complaints and I thought, oh, yeah, they have a point. But, I still liked it. And I still felt like I was in Middle Earth. And I talked to my oldest son, who can be pretty critical about movies and things like that. And he agreed with me. So I felt I was certain he must be right if he and I agreed. So the movie, the big, long Peter Jackson Hobbit movies are certainly not perfect. But they are enjoyable if you have a mind to enjoy them. So I'm getting them all 10. The book, of course, gets a 10. It started the entire fantasy genre, whether you like it or not. They started it, and it was just fun to read. I don't know how many times I've read it over the years. Who knows? Many, many times. And I enjoy it every time. And the movies, I enjoy them too. And the silly little Rankin Bass animations are just delightful. You can get yourself into a mind where you are going to hate everything. This isn't perfect. This isn't true to the book. The dwarves look funny, whatever. And then what's left in the world to enjoy? Now, some things are truly awful and deserve whatever criticism you can give them, but not everything is completely awful. So even Little Rankin Bass movie gets 10 out of 10. So that's The Hobbit. There's so much that could be said. I can't tell you how many university classes I took that were based on The Hobbit. How many books? No. There? This side. That whole, see, my hand goes right there. That whole shelf up there is Tolkien-related books, and those ones on the top there are too. I've spent a lot of my life studying The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all that. And many people might think that's kind of a silly waste of time for a grown woman to do, but I find a lot of value in the Lord of the Ring books. The good, the true, the beautiful, it's all there. Good guys versus bad guys. And what wins the day in all of Tolkien's books, because he was a devout Christian, he was a devout Catholic Christian, it is the humble, the self-sacrificing, the decent person and their actions that carry the day. Tolkien himself said Sam was the hero of The Lord of the Rings. And like I said, Bilbo's act of mercy in not killing or even harming Gollum is what ends up saving the whole world. So there's a lot to be learned from reading these books, and I think if you have I know some people who have never read these books or watched the movies, and I just want them to. I just want them to. I want them to be delighted and to learn some things, just to learn some See, Tolkien sees everything from a Christian point of view. Even if he's talking about wizards and dwarves and all that, basically everything is Christian. He himself said that all his literature is basically Catholic. I can see that. I can really see that. So that's all I have to say today for this beautiful little book that started so much, has brought so many people and led so many people into a lot of joy. So I think you should read it. I think you should watch the movies. You don't have to if you don't want to. There's other things. Anyway, that's all I have for today. So go read a good book of some sort.